A weird thing for me was to grow up as an adopted child in Massachusetts and Maine, in a town that I'll call Clorox, USA. There, there was there there were only a couple of families of color, and I wasn't in one of them. My family they would say, yes, we're very proud that we're part Micmac, but nobody ever did anything about it, investigated it, and went and met any Micmac people. And I was always curious, and my mom said, well, you know, what you're going to see in the movies and read in books is not always true. And that was good for me. She said, maybe when you grow up, you can go out and find out. And that's what I did. I had a rough childhood. I was real glad to go to college and to get out of the town. But in that town, there was one Native American person. He was a Narragansett man. He ran a trading post. And he became kind of my connection. He was a kind adult and he and his wife gave me some guidance as a young person that's always stayed with me. And when I was in, I think, 4th or 5th grade, the teacher said, we're going to go and see the Indians. We were studying Indians. And we were going to go to the museum and see the Indians, but they didn't take me to the art museum. Oh, I had a good time last night. Wasn't that great? Oh, I had such a good time. Wesley, where are you? Thanks for the dance. They didn't take us to the art museum. They didn't take us to a culture museum. They took us to the Natural History Museum, and there were the Indians, dead and stuffed alongside the dinosaurs. So I learned in my life, trying to go into the class they called music, which I didn't understand at all, this secondhand decoding system handed down from Europe, you know, sharps and flats and notes. I was a natural musician. I didn't need any of that. I learned through my ears. I've since found out that I'm dyslexic in music. And just recently, some books were written. I mean, I can write for an orchestra, but I can't read it back the next day. So it's kind of a vision-brain communication thing. But I can write for an orchestra. I just do it by ear. So I learned two things. Not only is it not true that there are no more Indians, and that our real truth is dead and stuffed in the museums. It's not true. But also that music is not secondhand only. Secondhand, that's okay if you learn that way. But real musicians, you know, Chet Atkins was a real good friend of mine. One time somebody asked him, could he read music? And he said, not enough to hurt my playing. So that's kind of person I am. So all of a sudden, here I am as a young person with too much money, and I'm kind of on the fringes of show business and writing things like Universal Soldier, and Elvis Presley's recording Until It's Time for You to Go. I found out that life is not necessarily what an outside observer would think it is. And as grant makers, we have to remember this. Artists, it's not as though we're meant to break the rules. We're meant to create new ways. This is what you're funding. These are the people you support. It's so hard to be an artist. There's no money out there for us. You don't know what it's like to have been in the record business. I mean, an artist comes into the arts thinking that it's about the art. You know, the music business is not about music, it's about business. This is a hard lesson for any creative person who's trying to support themselves through art and music. It's a very difficult lesson to learn because it's kept from us. There are dirty deals made in this world that are kept from people, kept from artists. Tomer mentioned Richard Nixon and Lyndon Johnson. You know, I didn't know that I was being blacklisted in the 60s. All of a sudden, you couldn't get my records in the U.S., and I'd, you know, be doing a concert for 5,000 people who wondered, well, why don't I hear your records anymore? What's going on? I had no idea. I found out 25 years later that my career had been deliberately put out of business. I only found out 4 years ago that Richard Nixon's, that the CIA was in on it as well. You know, one had to do with Universal Soldier. Do you remember that? Some of you are old enough to remember that war that they were saying they weren't having. You remember that war, that Vietnam War? They were saying that there was no war. Yeah, right. Well, I knew that there was because I just knew that there was. I had spent some time with soldiers who let me know, yes, there was a war. But you know, it's not as though you can hate your country or be mad at your government when those things happen, because those things are happened by some staffer protecting his boss. And yes, Lyndon Johnson wrote letters commending radio stations for suppressing my music, which, in the words that appeared on the letter, deserved to be suppressed. It's ego. It's individual, egotistical power men whose staffers help them to do what they're told to do. This exists. I'm not trying to blow the whistle on anything. I'm trying to inform you and enlighten you. Artists go through that kind of stuff. In the record business, the artist isn't the star. The record company will go out and they'll sign 20 people, and 19 of them are going to have their work put on the shelf where they can't even get at it. You can't even get your own records to give them away. The artist is the mule that pulls the cart. The system gets in between the artist and the audience. So how can the medicine of the arts exist without you, without your help, without your understanding, without your knowing how it really is for artists? Not only Native American artists, but all artists. This is what we go through. Artists are not told that their paintings, their sculpture, whatever it is that they're doing, are basically going to be 85% for the gallery, and they'll be lucky if they get enough money even to buy supplies. This is what you're funding. This is why you're important. How can we help artists in this world? I wish that we could work together to just rip back the bedclothes on this issue. It ought to be online. I'd like to do a website, for instance. How to go on the road, you know? How, when you're going to Europe, how to go through customs. What's the difference between an agent and a manager? How much of a percentage are you supposed to be giving? Nobody tells artists these things. The gallery owners, the museums, the record business, Hollywood, they don't want artists to know these things. We're there to pull the cart. We're there to be milked for money. I'm sorry, but that's how it is. This is one of the things that you guys can help me fix, that I can help you fix, just by knowing about it. When you're funding art, when you're funding artists, you're funding their family, you're funding their community, you're funding creativity. You know, if you believe in the creator, you know, that artist, that creative artist is potentially able to help to change the world. But a lot of guys out there, they don't want the world to change. Oh, Buffy, nobody wants war. BS. There's big-time money in war. War is about money laundering. Money laundering. War isn't, it's not about this religion doesn't like that religion. No. Those are the things that are used to keep up the sham and the scam, in my humble opinion. So I have grown up as a person who was told that music comes from notes and lines and staffs. That's kind of confusing. I come from a life where there aren't any Indians anymore, so you probably can't really be one. Yeah. So this kind of dichotomy has beaded the edges of my life. I've lived in the same world you have, but I've lived in some other worlds too. Some very sparkly and wonderful, and some very rootsy and real. When I first went to Greenwich Village, I didn't know a lawyer. I didn't come from, most grassroots people, most grassroots artists have never met a lawyer. I never had a business person in my family. You know, we came from a very, very working class background. So I had written Universal Soldier, and there was a group called the Highwaymen. Michael, row the boat ashore, right? Remember those guys? Yeah. So they were coming off a hit, and they heard me sing Universal Soldier at some little coffee house. And they wanted to record it. And they said, who's the publisher? And I said, what's that? And a guy at the table said, oh, I can help you with that. But in order for it to be legal, you have to sign an agreement, and I have to give you some money. He gave me $1, and I signed on the dotted line and gave away the rights to Universal Soldier for $1. The good news is that 10 years later, I had enough money to buy him off for $25,000 to get my copyright back. That's how it is for artists. The arts attract money. The artist doesn't usually get it. There are so many middlemen, so many sharks and slicks in between our good intentions to support artists. There's so many guys out there just needing to suck it up. So God bless you guys who fund the arts, who fund community art as well as individual art, who fund murals in Chicago as well as the symphony. Yeah, we need it all. We need it all. It's vital.